are three things we have learned at least I have learned, in the post-war period, because we had about 50 years of experience. And I'll focus more on the poor countries. The rich countries are not all that different anyway, in terms of what I'm saying. One is we need to be less fearful of the external environment, of the international trade and investment. We were so fearful. I mean, a lot of poor countries just turned off trade altogether. India in '91, its inward flow of equity investment, meaning of multinational equity, you won't believe it, was $10 million. Unbelievable. It didn't make any sense because it just turned inward, and it was just making it difficult for people to bring things in. Sorry, it was 100 million, not 10 million. I lost a zero on that one. Yeah, but it's still nothing. It's 1/3 the size of our budget at Columbia University. So it was really miserable. We have learned that trade and investment are an opportunity, not a threat, right? You can use them. Doesn't mean you throw yourself completely open, but you can use them much more than many countries did. I think that's one important lesson. The second is there was a fear of markets, basically, and that's natural. When there are lots of scarcities and you're behind the curve, your first reaction is to go and intervene, try and accelerate things. And it's a natural feeling. Professor Gerschenkron at Harvard, a great historian, wrote a whole book about economic backwardness in historical perspective, how if you're behind the curve, you intervene. But of course, he wasn't critical of it. He was sort of describing it, more or less. And it's very difficult to learn that markets can be used to achieve whatever objectives you want to, because that sounds totally counter to common sense. So, I mean, like when I came to this country and started driving under snow, and I was told that if you get us into a skid, you steer in the direction of the skid. I said, are you trying to kill me? Because it sounds absurd, right? Because your natural tendency, common sense, would be to go the other way. So it's that kind of thing. We've learned that. So even in environment, now people are much more willing to discuss, all right, if we want to reduce CO2 emissions, we can use tradable permits, right, rather than just quantitative controls. So everywhere, I think people have moved to the middle ground on that one too, not knee-jerk rejection of markets. Again, more skepticism about just public sector per se. When I was growing up, everybody was to the public sector, including myself. We've learned again that, it can settle into a variety of problems. The incentive structure becomes very, very difficult to handle. It doesn't mean no public sector. It does mean that try and use it judiciously, otherwise leave it to the private sector. And the third one, of course, is democracy. I think we discussed it on China, and I think there a lot of us were skeptical at the beginning because, again, the model we were using was one where it was almost Marxist, which was that blood, sweat, and tears would produce, surplus, which you would invest and grow faster, all right? Now, so similarly, a draconian system, a communist system like China, would be able to tax its citizens much more drastically, create a greater surplus, and grow faster. But we never allowed for the fact that it would also undermine people's incentives and so on and so forth, that growth was not just a function of investment, but also of how much you got out of it. And that has now come into the picture. So democracy now is not just a value in itself, which it was when I was young, but it's also seen as being productive. So it is good on both, on grounds of sustainable development. So I think these are three important lessons we have learned, and I think those are things which I would really push. In fact, I wrote to the new president of the World Bank. I said, the first thing you need to do is to study, because he's not into development. This is one of the problems, again, about about leadership which we provide for international institutions. I mean, you know, Bob Zoellick was very fine for Doha, but I doubt if he's studied the environment. I doubt if he knows anything about anything that's to do with development. So I said, look, study it. These are the kinds of ideas which some of us really believe we've learned as a result of experience, not from armchair theorizing. And develop your own vision and then make a speech about what you stand for. And then develop the different programs around that. So things like corruption, for example. Corruption grew because of the licensing system. It's not something endogenous to a culture. It is also a function of policies, right? And so we know something about all that now. And so bring it all together.